getting a name or having some title. I don't care about that. I'm at a point in my life where those things don't matter to me. When I was a young man, I wanted that recognition. I'm at a point in my life now, I just want to get things done and protect you. Thank you.
Not that fast.
What have your decisions been on abortion?
The Supreme Court has had Arizona Supreme Court hasn't had any abortion cases. When I was a trial judge, you have what's called an abortion bypass. Those are private matters, but there is one reported decision where I denied one, and you can read it. And you can see exactly how I denied it and why I denied it. I was never a rubber stamp on those, I can tell you that.
I've heard this before, but could you explain what your approach is about the border issue?
When I was a prosecutor on the border, one of the things I noticed is that the federal government, the Department of Justice, was never consistent. They would come and go. And that was Republican and Democrat administrations. Sometimes they get all down there and they start charging a bunch of cases, and then they'd have a big press conference, and then they'd plead everything out. And so it came to my understanding, we cannot rely on the federal government to provide border security. We need to rely on ourselves as a state. And so the no trespassing zone plan, you've probably seen those signs. This is what it comes down to. I don't care who's in the White House. We got to protect our citizens and their property. And so when cartels and caravans step on state and private land, we have the authority to arrest for trespass, seize the fentanyl, the drugs, prosecute the cartel members. We can prosecute illegal aliens for a whole host of gang-related organized crime, syndicated crime cases. And here's the beauty of it. In Texas, the AG has to have permission from the local DA to come down and prosecute any of these cases. So you get a liberal DA in Texas, they won't play ball. Not so in Arizona. The Arizona Attorney General has the authority to prosecute organized crime. They don't have to get permission from a local county attorney. So if you get some liberal county attorney, let's say Pima County, and they won't prosecute the case, the AG can come down and prosecute. And what we can do is we can separate the cartel cases. Just stepping on somebody's property with 5 pounds of fentanyl is mandatory prison, 12.5 years. Mandatory prison without even trying to use those individuals to cooperate against the cartels. I'll tell you, I've done wiretaps and I've done investigations with informants. Give me one good snitch inside a cartel and I'll take it down. But with respect to the illegal aliens, I'm going to offer them a plea. They can take unsupervised probation if they voluntarily return to Mexico. Because I don't want to have 1 million people in our jails if I can get them to go back. That's the plan.
Last question.
Okay, we all know there's a lot of fraud going on in our elections. What kind of plan do you have to look into that if you're appointed as the Attorney General?
All right, I'll be brief. We need to finish the investigation that's pending right now, step it up, and we got to prosecute people who broke the election laws, okay? I mean, that is impossible to let that go. Second, we've got to expand that election integrity unit to 10 or 12 lawyers, 7 or 8 investigators. It's 1 lawyer right now. We've got to aggressively make sure that the voter rolls are cleaned up. We can do that with a lawsuit. We've got to oppose the ballot harvesting, and we've got to absolutely defend the citizenship law, HB 2492. It is asinine to say that you don't have to prove you're a citizen to vote in this country. Thank you so much.
No, it's okay. Thank you. Okay, moving along, I would like to welcome our next Attorney General candidate, Rodney Glassman.
First off, thank you all for staying. I appreciate this. I've been trying to catch people on their way out. I'm Rodney Glassman. I'm an Air Force JAG prosecutor. I've prosecuted drug dealers and financial crimes and protected victims of sexual assault. I'm now a major in the United States Air Force JAG Corps Reserve, but as a reservist, I'm assigned to the active duty, which means when I put on my uniform and go out to Luke Air Force Base, I am the acting staff judge advocate for the base. That means that every lawyer, every paralegal, and every support staff reports to me because I'm running the office. In addition to serving in the Air Force, I'm also a private attorney in town at Buse Gilbert McGuire, and I practice business law and high-stakes litigation. I'm running for Attorney General because I know the job of the Attorney General is to be your lawyer and to protect you from the government. Now, when I talk about protecting you from the government, the first thing that pops into everyone's head is what? The federal government? Because we're living in this time where, while we have immigration laws, if you come here illegally, Joe Biden rents you hotel rooms in Scottsdale. If you work in the private sector, they want your employer to jab you with a needle, but if you come here illegally, they give you a slip of paper so you can get on a plane at Sky Harbor and fly to New York to vote. We need an attorney general who will enforce the law, and if that means our attorney general has to help our new Republican governor declare an invasion, then that's what we need to do, because it will be our Republican attorney general who goes back to Washington, D.C. and defends that declaration in front of the new Trump-appointed Supreme Court. And then I will come back to Arizona and work with our state legislature to pass Arizona laws so that our local law enforcement can arrest, our local law enforcement can incarcerate, and our local law enforcement can deport. And then there'll be another lawsuit, and it'll be the Attorney General that has to go back to Washington, D.C. and defend our Arizona laws, and then come home and work with local law enforcement as the chief law enforcement officer to enforce our Arizona laws. The Attorney General is the hub of the wheel. Your attorney is the hub of the wheel when it comes to fighting illegal immigration. But in addition to protecting you from the federal government, it's also about protecting you from our state government. We live in a state right now with Republican leadership that shut down the gyms, that shut down the restaurants, that tried to shut down the churches. And do you know who had legal standing to file for an injunction to stop that illegal executive order? The Attorney General. And we need an Attorney General that's going to enforce our election laws, the ones we already have on the books. Did you know we already have a law that says you have to have 2 valid forms of ID to register to vote? You know who's in charge of enforcing it? The Attorney General. We already have a law on the books that says that ballot harvesting is prohibited. Who's in charge of enforcing that one? The Attorney General. And we already have a law on the books that says that every county recorder is to manage and audit their permanent early voting list. Now, who's in charge of enforcing that one? The Attorney General. But we live in a state where your realtor can tell you who moved and who died, but the county recorder can't. So it's about protecting you from the feds and the state, but it's also about our local governments. Every candidate running for Attorney General will stand up and tell you they want to protect the police, right? We've heard them all say it. But a better question, who do the police want protecting them? Because in a 6-way Republican primary, every single police association across the state has endorsed the same candidate for Attorney General. They've endorsed my candidacy, Flagstaff, Prescott, Chandler, Buckeye, Goodyear, Phoenix, all across the state, because our police want an Attorney General that's going to protect them from the government too. And lastly, it's about protecting us from our schools. My wife and I, we have 2 little girls, they're 11 and 9. And we need an Attorney General that when these schools are teaching critical race theory, trying to push human sexuality, we have an Attorney General that will say no and will cut off their funding, which the Attorney General can do. So this is a job interview. This is a job interview to run the largest law office in the state, and it's a chance for you to hire your attorney. So 3 questions I hope you consider. Number 1, have you ever ran a law office? Because of the 6 Republicans running, I'm the only one that can answer yes. Number 2, tell me the name of your last 3 paying clients. You're not hiring a judge. You're not hiring a marketing person. You're hiring your attorney that will fight for you. Not the governor's attorney, she gets her own attorneys. Not the legislature's attorney, they get their own attorneys too. Your attorney. And then lastly, are you supported by police and fire? Because guess what? When we call 911 here at home, that's who comes. And they'd like me protecting them, and I'd like to be serving you. My name's Rodney Glassman. I'd love to earn your vote. This is the largest law office in the state. The Department of Real Estate, State Land Department, Registrar of Contractors, the Department of Education, none of those agencies have their own attorneys. They all receive their legal services from the 425 assistant attorney generals. And when a family applies for an IEP, an individual education plan, they apply at the school. But that application is sent to the Department of Education. And there it goes through a 4-step administrative review. And the last step for that IEP application is a legal review from an assistant attorney general. So if you want an attorney that will call you back, that knows how to serve clients, and will fight for you, then I ask you to visit my website, rodneyglassman.com, and I'd love to have your support. And if there's time for one question or 2 questions, I'd love to take it. 2 questions we got. Quick hand right there next to the camera. Ma'am.
Did you have the opportunity to help anybody against government overreach during COVID, an individual or business, since you are a lawyer?
Since I am a lawyer,
Yeah, so did you represent anybody against government overreach during COVID? Either a business, a gym, a bar, a restaurant, or somebody being required to take the COVID vaccination?
no, what I did, or I should say yes, what I did with a number of parents actually, not as their attorney, but just guiding them, we're a school choice family. My wife was the president of a public school board. When it came time for our daughters to go to school, we chose a charter school. And during the plandemic, as Senator Borelli, one of my supporters, calls it, during the plandemic, we made a decision to move our kids to a private school, a school where they did not have to wear masks. And that is something that I coached a number of other families on. Because one of the best things we have in Arizona now is school choice, the ESA expansion that just happened, where every family will get to choose what school they go to. And the reason that's so important is because with that state funding now going to every school, what that does is it gives the Attorney General the purview to make sure when any school receiving state funding is doing things they shouldn't be doing by state law, the Attorney General can reach in and stop that. So that was my work that I was able to help with during the pandemic. One last question? Right there.
Hi, I have a question about the Dominion machines and equipment being used in this county. This seems to be the only county that's being used for that purpose, and the other counties don't have it. Is there a reason why we're still using that Dominion software or machines when we know that there was a possibility that there was a compromise in the last election?
The County Board of Supervisors, none of whom have endorsed my candidacy, picked those machines. And the reality is, and many of us, and that's a good point, if the Attorney General would have even tried to do an audit, you literally would have had to go to Colorado, because to your point, no one in Arizona uses the Dominion machines, which begs the question why, and I'm going to use this to parlay into what should have happened with the 2020 election. You can probably tell by now, if I was the Attorney General, I would have enforced the laws that are already on the books beforehand. So there wouldn't have been ballot harvesting, there wouldn't have been illegal people voting, there wouldn't have been dead people getting ballots. I would have stopped that. That's why Congressman Gosar is supporting my candidacy. But with the circumstantial evidence that was presented, I would have opened an investigation. I would have done an audit as the Attorney General, because Attorney Generals before Mark Brnovich have done that. We need an Attorney General who will do the job. In the Air Force, we have a saying, what's your favorite assignment? For those of you that are military, the answer is the one I have now. And if Mark Brnovich would have been less focused on what he was running for next and more on just doing the job, that wouldn't have happened. The Dominion machines, obviously, if there's only one county doing it, makes it very difficult for transparency. And that's why the legislature should probably be looking into it and take a step as to what to do next. But what I can tell you is, as Attorney General, based on the current laws with no changes, 2 valid forms of ID, no ballot harvesting, audits before the election, and if you cheat or commit fraud, here's my pledge to you, you will be prosecuted. I'm Rodney Glassman, and I'd love to earn your support. Thank you.
Thank you so much, Rodney. Okay, we're almost done. So you've hung out this far, you've hung out this long, you can make it for 10, 12 more minutes, right? Because we have 2 more amazing candidates to hear from, 5 minutes each. Maricopa County Attorney, very, very critical position. And I did want to just mention Tiffany Shedd, who is also running for Attorney General. She was supposed to be here tonight. Unfortunately, because of the crazy storm, did everybody get a crazy storm last night? It damaged her property pretty significantly, and she is in cleanup mode. And unfortunately, she was very sad to miss this event. So we apologize for that, but please keep Tiffany in your prayers. And at this time, we would like to introduce our first Maricopa County Attorney candidate, Rachele Mitchell.
Good evening. Thank you for hanging in there. My name is Rachele Mitchell, and I am your county attorney, and I'm running to be elected as your county attorney. I just want to tell you briefly about myself. Many of you have seen me speak already. I am a 30-year prosecutor in the county attorney's office. I spent 25 of those years prosecuting crimes against children and sexual assault, and I was sworn in as the county attorney in April, but that was not the first time that I ran the office. I actually worked for Bill Montgomery, who asked me to be his chief deputy, and so when he left for the Arizona Supreme Court, I took over the office back then, and that was in 2019. I've been a division chief in the office. I've been over sex crimes and family violence, which is child physical abuse, domestic violence, elder physical abuse. And I've also been over capital homicides, other homicides, gang cases, vehicular crimes. In fact, I've been over much of the office. When I took over the office, there were some problems, to be sure. And I'm not going to recount here the issues that the county attorney who stepped down had, but there were some personal issues. So what have I done in this almost 3 months that I have been over the office? Well, first of all, I brought in a new leadership team. I have a new chief deputy. I brought him from the Attorney General's office, and he has over 40 years of prosecution experience. I have a new chief of staff. I just hired a new division chief to be over the appellate section, who is the attorney of the year, and he decided to come work for us. I've also added another new division chief who came from the Attorney General's office. I've replaced some bureau chiefs. Those are internal things, but let me tell you about the external things that are going to really matter to you to keep you safer. Do you know who illegal immigrants are that will go back to Mexico? They're the ones that get arrested here and get released on no bond, and then we can't hold them accountable. We have had a 5-year policy by our courts of setting low to no bonds on some very dangerous people. And what happens is when these drug dealers that are coming across the county, they come across with tons of drugs, fentanyl that is killing our children, killing our citizens, and guess what? There's another drug on the horizon that looks like fentanyl on steroids that we're just starting to see here in Maricopa County. And it has got to be stopped. But those are the only immigrants that will return to Mexico because the judges have been letting them out. And so my office had fallen into sort of this lackadaisical, or at least some of the attorneys' attitude of, well, you know, he should get a $100,000 bond, but maybe if I ask for 10, the judge will give me a $10,000 bond. That has stopped. The attorneys have now been told, you're going to ask for the bond that you think is appropriate, whether you think the judge is going to give you that or not. And guess what? It's working. So the female police officer that was shot, the Phoenix police officer that was shot by those 2 individuals, their bonds, $2 million cash-only bonds. Cash only means 100%. The guy that last week pistol whipped one of our citizens and pulled a gun on some police officers and another security guard. He's in custody now with no bond at all, meaning there's no amount of money that he can post to get out. So things are changing. We are going to hold drug smugglers accountable. We're not a border county, so we're not exactly on the border, but boy, are we feeling the effects of that border. I used to call it a porous border, but that's not true because porous implies that there's something there at all, and there's nothing there at all. And we are seeing the impact. You look at the homelessness, some of that is due to mental illness, some of that is due to bad life circumstances, but massive amounts of that are due to drugs, and they have to be stopped. We're seeing retail theft pick up here. I met with the Arizona Retailers Association 2 weeks ago, and stay tuned on that, but they were telling me we used to just deal with Arizona criminals. Now we have criminals coming in from Los Angeles and Vegas and Albuquerque. What do those things have in common? Prosecutors who don't enforce the law. And they're coming here and they think they're going to commit their crimes here. And guess what? Maricopa County Sheriff's Office just arrested 2 people that tried that in Anthem recently. And they're going to bring them back here. So my message to the people who are in those other states who have gotten used to those wimpy, I won't enforce the law kind of prosecutors is when you come to Arizona, plan to stay a little longer than you had anticipated. Because we're going to keep you here. And don't worry about a hotel reservation. So I will enforce the law. We have prosecutors, of course, that our Democratic opponent has said she won't enforce the abortion law. God only knows what else she won't enforce. But I will enforce the law because that is the job of the county attorney, is to prosecute, to keep the community safe, and to enforce the law. Do you have time for questions? I see a question way back there.
I have a question, and here's my question.
Okay.
With all due respect, why should we vote for you for anything after the performance you gave in the Brett Kavanaugh hearings when you did absolutely the worst cross-examination that I have ever seen in my entire life of Christine Blasey Ford, who was so obviously a fraud? Anyone with half a functioning brain could see that.
Why do you think you were able to see that?
Because I sat and watched the whole thing. How's that? Very
Right.
intently.
The
That was the
questions-
worst cross I've ever seen in my
It
life.
wasn't a cross. So when I was interviewed, you asked me a question, let me answer. When the United States Senate Judiciary Committee called me the Friday before the hearing and asked me to interview with them, I talked to them the next morning and I said, I work with victims, and if you're expecting me to rip her apart, that's not appropriate because people will see that and they won't trust me if they are true victims. What I would propose is that we do it as an interview where she's allowed to speak as much as possible. That's the appropriate way to do it. They told me of other prosecutors who had described themselves as, and I quote, bulldogs that will take her down and rip her apart. I laughed and I said, if that's what you want, you don't want me. And the Senate Judiciary Committee said, that's not what we want. We do want you. We want you to do it like you've proposed. So I did. Now, it became a little bit more difficult with the 5-minute increments. That was tacked on when Christine Blasey Ford got into town the day before the hearing, and that was her insistence, and so I lived within those means. But what I would say to you is this: you know that you listened to her and you thought she was a fraud. Why? Because of the questions that brought out the information that allowed you to think that. And it was so successful that the Senate voted to confirm Brett Kavanaugh, who, by the way, voted to overturn Roe v. Wade a couple of weeks ago, and you're welcome.
Alrighty, everybody, one more candidate left. Thank you so much for joining us tonight. I'd like to welcome up Rachele Mitchell. I'm so sorry. Gina Godbehere, who's also running for Maricopa County Attorney. Thank you. I'm so sorry.
Thank you. I feel horrible that you guys almost need to stand and stretch because thank you for waiting for the last night with me. My name is Gina Godbehere. I'm running for Maricopa County Attorney. Just a little about me. I'm a fourth-generation Arizona native and a mother of 2 daughters. I live with my husband and I in Goodyear. I was born and raised in Peoria, right at 67th and Sweetwater area where it was all cotton fields. I attended Cactus High School, so I know this community well. I love this community, and I'm fighting to protect our community. I went to law school to be a prosecutor. I spent 25 years with the county attorney's office. Well, there I was, started out in juvenile, then I was a gang rape homicide attorney. I personally tried over 100 felony jury trials myself, including multiple homicide cases, and I have a 99% conviction rate. I've trained over 200 prosecutors in that office, including homicide attorneys, and I led a team of homicide. When I managed the Northwest Valley, it was from Grand Canyon to Anthem to Wickenburg. We handled every felony, including homicides that occurred in this jurisdiction. I left after 25 years. I didn't just prosecute cases and trained attorneys. I was training at the police academy, law enforcement officers, how to present trial testimony, how to write reports. I trained attorneys how to prosecute officer cases because my passion is the police, because I'm going to tell you there's no victim in our criminal justice system who's attacked, who's shot, like a police officer, and they turn right back around, they put their uniform on and go right back into the same situation again and again and again. You need a prosecutor to protect our law enforcement officer, and that's not happening. And I will stand up for law enforcement, and I'm going to stand up for this community that I love. When I left the city of Goodyear, I found out the county attorney's office is only filing 49% of their cases. They're downgrading serious felonies to misdemeanors and sending them to our cities. Felonies to misdemeanors. We don't have supervised probation in any of the cities. That includes in Peoria. When you make the unilateral decision to downgrade felonies and send them to the cities, you've made our law enforcement and our communities less safe, and you've cost all of you guys, taxpayers, more money. We need to start holding offenders accountable. We need to start supporting our law enforcement, because when law enforcement is not safe, our community isn't safe. I am running for county attorney because I'm worried about this community that I love. Law enforcement asked me to run. I've got the backing of 90% of all law enforcement agencies. They supported me because they know we need a change. And I'm going to tell you how you know, too. Born and raised here, look around us of what we see in our community. The homeless population, do you think it's getting better or worse? Mental health, substance abuse, it is getting worse. We've been a treatment-first state for 26 years. What we're doing now, not only the catch and release and releasing people, we are not holding the people who commit offenses to support their drug habit accountable. There is no stick anymore, it's all a carrot. And law enforcement is feeling it. Assaults on officers are up, homicides are up, and everything is in our community, it's getting worse. We got to stop enabling people who use drug and steal to support their habit. We need to hold offenders accountable. So when I look around and I see the status quo is not working, the same at the county attorney's office, the same vision, they might be different people, but they were back. The chief deputy, he hired me. I have great respect for Paul Ayler, but he was the chief deputy under Rick Romley. You can't use yesterday's ideas to solve today's problems. We need new blood, new direction, because I hate to say this, what's happening in Chicago, Seattle, Los Angeles, it's on our doorsteps. And I know you have to agree with me. I left the city of Goodyear because I believe so much in what's at stake here. And I have to fight for this community. I want to tell you a little about my family history, too. My great-great-grandmother came out here on wagon train, and she was interviewed in the Arizona Republic in 1941. There was an article in the Arizona Republic. You know what the headline was? They wanted to know about her journey out here to Arizona and how she came out by wagon train. 1941, my great-great-grandmother said, "My generation made America great." 92-year-old. Her second sentence, "I want to see my great-grand generation make it greater." And I thought, wow, that's me. That's a calling. My great-great-grandmother came here on this hard journey as a pioneer woman where she would become the first woman to register a cattle brand in the territory of Arizona, so I can stand here today. And if I'm not willing to fight for this community, this state that my family has called home for generations, what is going to be left for my great-great-grandchildren? That's why I'm stepping up. That's why I'm running. I only have 5 minutes, so I really hope you go to my website, Gina for Maricopa, find out why all law enforcement, almost all the elected officials who know me because they've worked in this community tirelessly for 26 years as that innovative problem-solving leader that we need to go forward. We need to go forward, not backwards, and I'm here to fight for you. That's Gina from Maricopa. Thank you very much. I have one time for one question if anyone has a question. Yes. Gina for Maricopa. FOR.
FOR.
And you can go, I have palm cards right there, and please take a sign too. Love to. Yes, thank you. All right.
Thank you so much, Gina. Wow, many of you have been here for more than 4 hours. That is some serious dedication. And we are so grateful for your time. Thank you so much for coming to this amazing event. Thank you again to Jason Beck for Interior Tactical for hosting us this evening, providing that amazing meal from Fat Ox Barbecue, right? That was some good barbecue, wasn't it? That was amazing. Thank you all so much. We will be back to our regularly scheduled Legislative District 28 meetings in August. August 18th will be our next meeting, so stay tuned to our website, ld28gop.com. And please visit the table over here to get your LD28 t-shirt so we can all wear them to the next meeting. All right, everyone, we will see you in August. God bless.